What if the 49ers didn't draft Trey Lance in the 2021 NFL draft third overall? There were a lot of reports around that time that speculated and suggested that the 49ers had a lot of interest on Mac Jones being drafted with that selection. So what if the 49ers, we rewind history, and instead of them taking Trey Lance third overall, they go ahead and they take Mac Jones? Now, if this ends up happening, Trey Lance probably falls to the Carolina Panthers at 8, or maybe he goes to the Denver Broncos. Maybe the Broncos don't draft Patrick Surtain because there were some Denver Broncos front office executives who did show up to Trey Lance Pro Day. Also some executives for the Carolina Panthers as well. And then they probably don't get J.C. Horn. He probably falls. Patrick Surtain, if he gets drafted not by the Broncos, he probably falls as well. And then for the 49ers, you probably still have Jimmy Garoppolo starting for you that season. Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be the starter regardless if Trey Lance was good or not. So I'm guessing for the 49ers, they just weren't all that comfortable just throwing a rookie quarterback out there right out the gate unless he had a little bit of time to sit and learn the system. So you get Mac Jones in there who sits a year behind Jimmy Garoppolo, and then come 2022, Mac Jones comes in, and I think that you end up having the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. And that may sound crazy because the Philadelphia Eagles went 14-3, but last year, the 49ers lost to the Chicago Bears week 1, 19-10, and the biggest reason why they lost that game was because Trey Lance struggled. So if you have Mac Jones, who would have been a better fit in that offense because Kyle Shanahan's offense is predicated on timing and having an accurate quarterback. That's something that Mac Jones was highly praised for when he was coming out of Alabama. And you couple that with the fact that you had one of the most talented teams in the NFL last season, you probably end up beating the Chicago Bears week 1. And you also probably end up beating the Denver Broncos because remember, Trey Lance was injured around that point. And then Jimmy G comes in and he was what you expect Jimmy G to be, and consistent in that game, and that's why you lost by 1 point to Denver. But if you have Mac Jones, you beat not just the Chicago Bears, but you also went against the Denver Broncos. And the 49ers, if their season would have continued the way that it did after those 2 losses, they would have ended up having a record of 15 wins and only 2 losses, which would have gave them the advantage in that 1 seed conversation for the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, against the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you get Mac Jones, you probably don't have the whole Brock Purdy thing coming around. Brock Purdy probably ends up still being the backup, or maybe Jimmy G, if you still can't find a way to trade him, he still is the backup. But I don't think that Mac Jones ends up suffering the same fate that Trey Lance did, because I think a large reason why Trey Lance got injured was because Kyle Shanahan was treating his quarterback like a damn running back. You definitely weren't going to be utilizing Mac Jones in that fashion. And Mac Jones, for the people who say, man, JT, like Mac Jones wouldn't have been a good fit for Kyle Shanahan's offense. Let me remind you that Kyle Shanahan runs a offense that's predicated on getting the ball out fast, a quarterback that's accurate in the short and intermediate passing game, and has a high football IQ. All 3 of those things is why Mac Jones, coming out of that draft class, was regarded as the most NFL ready. That's why he got drafted by New England. They were looking for a quarterback who could come in and be good right away. Now, if this ends up happening, then the Patriots, who do they get at quarterback? If Trey Lance ends up getting drafted by Carolina or Denver, does Justin Fields still get taken by the Chicago Bears? So does that mean that the New England Patriots end up going corner and Cam Newton potentially ends up still being the starting quarterback for Carolina going into that season? Because you got to remember that Mac Jones was just so good during OTAs and minicamp that he just made Cam Newton just look washed up and made him look like a jabroni, to the point that Cam Newton ended up getting released because they had so much confidence in Mac Jones. So for the Patriots, are they a worse team without Mac Jones, with how he performed during his rookie season? Because Mac Jones was the best rookie quarterback that season. And he also made it to the Pro Bowl in New England, ended up being a playoff team due to how well Mac Jones performed that season. and you put him with the 49ers, Mac Jones probably ends up being way better than what he was with New England, especially when you think about how last season went for him, having Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator. Now, do the 49ers go further in the playoffs with Mac Jones versus having a Jimmy G or Brock Purdy? Probably not. I still think that based off this season, they probably still lose to the Philadelphia Eagles because the Philadelphia Eagles were just stacked at every single position. But I do think that you don't have the current quarterback situation that the 49ers are dealing with right now, with Brock Purdy coming off that elbow injury, Jimmy G's now gone, and Trey Lance. You don't even know if this dude is good enough to be a starting quarterback in the league. And then you got Sam Darnold, who is a good backup option, but if you got Mac Jones, you probably don't have the questions about your quarterback position for the long term. And people say that Mac Jones shouldn't have been drafted that high. When you draft that high, you got to go for the guy with the higher upside. I disagree with that. Kyle Shanahan, according to these reports, he really liked it, Mac Jones, and he was talked out of drafting him, according to some other rumors out there that say that John Lynch and other people inside of the 49ers front office wanted Trey Lance. And I get it. You go for the upside. You swing for the fences because you want the superstar potential. But Mac Jones could have been a really good QB. He could have been maybe not an elite QB, but better than Jimmy Garoppolo, because what does Mac Jones bring to the table that Jimmy G does? More mobility. Even though Mac Jones isn't the most mobile quarterback in the game, he still does have enough mobility to be able to pick up some yards with his legs. He really is good in play action situations if you want to get him outside the pocket and get him on the run. Like, Mac Jones is a solid quarterback, and he's a really good fit in this Kyle Shanahan's offense. And with Kyle Shanahan's play calling, Mac Jones gets elevated. Most people viewed Mac Jones' ceiling coming out of Alabama no better than a top 12 QB. But with Kyle Shanahan having Mac Jones in his system, Mac Jones probably becomes a top 10 QB. Now, he probably doesn't end up becoming a highly ranked top 10 QB, but he probably ends up being around 9 or 8. And I know some people are going to disagree with that, but you got to remember that Mac Jones had a fantastic rookie season with the New England Patriots. He just got held back his sophomore season due to the fact that Bill Belichick mishandled the offensive coordinator position. Why the hell would you make your defensive coordinator your OC? That's beyond me, but that's why I'm not coaching, and that's why I get paid to talk in front of a microphone, people. But with Kyle Shanahan, Mac Jones builds off his rookie season, well, his second season, but that technically would be his rookie season, because in this situation, in this scenario, we're still going off the assumption that Mac Jones still has to sit behind Jimmy G, because Trey Lance sat behind Jimmy G for a whole entire season. So many people probably would speculate that Mac Jones still doesn't end up dethroning Jimmy G, because Kyle Shanahan probably just didn't want to throw a rookie QB out there that fast. He probably still wanted Mac Jones to get a better understanding of the playbook and having somebody to learn from, and sitting behind Jimmy Garoppolo for a year, which would have set Mac Jones up for better success year 2, because he didn't have to worry about the turmoil when it came to the offensive coordinator position. And also, you had receivers that were actually able to separate. Last year, Mac Jones was throwing to Devontae Adams. Imagine what he could be doing with a Brandon Ayuk, a George Kittle, and a Deebo Samuel with a legitimate running game behind him, even though Ramondre Stevenson was really good. But the Patriots didn't have a good offensive line last season. So everything that Mac Jones would have in San Francisco would be way better than what he currently has right now with the New England Patriots. And what that means for Trey Lance, if Trey Lance ends up going to Carolina, he probably ends up being exposed even faster, because you saw how Matt Rule's final seasons went in Carolina. The quarterback position was his Achilles heel. So Trey Lance probably gets thrown out there to the Wolves really early his rookie season. He probably struggles and he probably isn't that good, and he ends up being a bust quickly, versus how people still are on the fence about Trey Lance right now. And then for Justin Fields, I still believe that he ends up going to the Chicago Bears. If the Denver Broncos end up taking Trey Lance, Patrick Surtain, he probably falls, but he probably doesn't fall too far. But you got to remember that Trey Lance had a lot of interest. There were some people who believed that maybe the Atlanta Falcons could have drafted Trey Lance 4th overall, but they ended up going with Kyle Pitts once Trey Lance got drafted by the 49ers at 3. But if the 49ers draft Mac Jones, a lot of things change. Not just are the 49ers better off long-term at the quarterback position, because regardless of what you say, well, Mac Jones isn't a great QB. He's an average QB. He's like a Kirk Cousins. Well, didn't Kyle Shanahan have some interest not too long ago in signing Kirk Cousins? Correct me if I'm wrong, but Kyle Shanahan seems to like quarterbacks who are able to be accurate, who are smart with the football. And you look at Trey Lance on the other hand, yeah, he's a better athlete than Mac Jones, but after all, who do you think would have given the 49ers the better chance to win last season if it came down to Mac Jones or Trey Lance? Probably Mac Jones. We still don't know if Trey Lance is good or not, but based off these reports that we keep hearing, Trey Lance still is a developmental project. So right now, it looks like the 49ers with that 3rd overall selection, they made a wasted pick because we still don't even know if Trey Lance is good. Meanwhile, with Mac Jones, we kind of already have a good indication of what Mac Jones can be. And if you put him in Kyle Shanahan's system, he gets elevated to being a 9 or 10 best QB in the NFL with the talent that he has around him and the coaching. So if the 49ers drafted Mac Jones, I think they would be better off in a better position right now versus what they are with drafting Trey Lance. Because nobody wants to trade for Trey Lance. There's not really a huge market for Trey Lance. And also, Brock Purdy, there's still reservations about him, even though I'm a big believer in Brock Purdy. But if we're going off the overall consensus in this situation, if Mac Jones never gets injured, like Trey Lance got injured earlier in the season because of how Kyle Shanahan was running him, we probably never get to see Jimmy Garoppolo, and we probably don't even get to see Brock Purdy. So this is my what-if scenario. If the 49ers were to draft Mac Jones instead of Trey Lance 3rd overall in the 2021 NFL draft, let me know what you guys think about that down in the comment section down below.